Shocking Secrets of America History by Bill Coate. 103 Surprising and Amusing Tales. We've been reading from this. I've been enjoying it. Hope you've been enjoying it too. Okay. America at the midpoint of the 19th century was a haven for reformers. Some were legitimately attempting to eliminate inequality and foster mutual benefit societies. Others, however, like the Oneida community, went off the deep end and demanded that members not only share their property, but their women as well. Now, this is back in the mid-1800s, by the way. This practice of complex marriages, which was nothing more than a philosophy of free love, may have worked for some, but it pushed young Charles Guiteau over the edge and wound up sending a nation into mourning. Who's Charles Guiteau? Do we know? The Oneida community was founded by John Humphrey Noyes. Noyes? Maybe Noyes. Although he dabbled in theology, this was his foremost interest. He was much more taken with the idea of playing sexual musical chairs with his followers. This is what excited Guiteau about Noyes' community lifestyle. There can be no doubt that the young man was attracted by the community's doctrine of free love. He convinced himself that he would be welcomed with open arms by the Oneida women. Here was a place where he would finally be appreciated. Besides that, he had $900 in his pocket, which he turned over to the community, hoping that this would further ingratiate him among the ranks of the fair sex. How wrong he was. Wow, $900 in the mid-1800s. I can't even imagine. That's like thousands. How do you get that money? Although everybody in the community was encouraged to share sexual favors with any member of the opposite sex, nobody jumped at the chance for a night with Charles. The women made fun of him and nicknamed him Charles Get Out. This, of course, was not acceptable and sent Charles into a psychological tailspin from which he never recovered. Oh, Charles, I'm sorry. Friction soon developed between him and most everyone else in the community. He even scrawled a line of chalk across the dormitory floor and insisted that his roommate not cross it, because the roommate was probably getting some. See, this is why. Accept people. Accept people. But also, consent. Consent. It sounded like this was, but don't make fun of a person. Charles then demanded that Noyes return his $900, which the commune leader refused to do. In retaliation, Charles issued a press release to the effect that Noyes had personally deflowered every virgin in the Oneida community, leaving none for a young man such as himself. This got him a quick exit from the Oneida community. Charles then went on to a period of deep depression after his rejection at Oneida and began to develop all sorts of delusional fantasies, not the least of which was his idea that the government required his services as a diplomat in Vienna. When nobody responded to his offer to serve, Charles moved to Washington and spent a great deal of time trying to convince the president that he was exactly the sort of man this nation needed to represent itself abroad. Now, this was President Garfield at the time. Once more he felt rejection, and this he could not handle. On July 2nd, 1881, Charles was able to reach the president in the train station next to Capitol Hill, and he put a bullet into his body. Actually, he put 2 bullets into his body, which took the life of the chief executive 3 months later. Okay, we'll get into that in a second. Thus did America lose a second president to an assassin. But the story was cleaned up for the classrooms. It was much more proper to teach that Charles Guiteau killed James Garfield because he was a disgruntled civil servant than to admit that his rejection in the free love community of Oneida was what sent him spinning into the fickle arms of fate and onto the pages of history. Okay, so yeah, he shot Garfield from behind. One bullet entered his back and the other bullet entered his arm. If the doctors at the time hadn't been probing around with leeches and unclean fingers and tools, the president most likely would have lived. They could not find the one in his back. This caused an infection because of how unclean everything was. After President Garfield had passed away, They did find the bullet in his back, and it was actually just under the skin. Yes. So Robert Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln's son, was actually in the train station, gonna be going someplace with President Garfield as well. And it's a real shame because I assume President Garfield may have made a really, really good president, but we'll never know. Anyway, Bill Coate, more shocking secrets in American history, 103 surprising and amusing tales.